Introduction. In the world of dating and relationships, most men struggle because they don't truly understand how female psychology works. They rely on guesswork, surface-level charm, or endless validation, never realizing that women are guided by deep, often hidden psychological triggers. The truth is, once a man learns how these triggers operate, what women really respond to on an emotional and subconscious level, everything changes. Suddenly the games, the confusion, and the manipulation lose their power because he can see through the patterns that keep most men stuck. This knowledge shifts the balance. Instead of chasing, he attracts. Instead of doubting himself, he moves with confidence and clarity. Women are no longer a mystery because he understands the psychology behind their desires, behaviors, and tests. That's why this lesson is so important. Once men know this truth, the endless struggle in relationships is over, and women can no longer control them with hidden dynamics. 1. Understanding female psychology ends confusion. Many men spend years feeling frustrated, lost, or even defeated when it comes to understanding women. But the truth is that most of this confusion stems not from women being unpredictable, but from men not taking the time to grasp the fundamentals of female psychology. At its core, female psychology is shaped by biology, social conditioning, and deep emotional needs, which, when understood, make their behavior far more transparent and even predictable. Women are highly attuned to emotional energy. They notice subtleties in tone, body language, and confidence far more than men usually realize. This is why a man who is insecure, hesitant, or overly needy can unintentionally repel a woman, while a man who demonstrates self-assurance, direction, and calm presence creates a sense of safety and attraction. Another key element is that women are wired for connection and security. They seek partners who can not only provide resources in a material sense but also stability in an emotional and psychological sense. This does not mean money is everything. It means consistency, reliability, and trustworthiness are more valuable than flashy gestures or temporary charm. Furthermore, women test boundaries, sometimes unconsciously, as a way to gauge a man's strength and leadership. If he crumbles or reacts emotionally, she loses respect. But if he remains firm yet composed, her trust deepens. By understanding these dynamics, men stop misinterpreting natural female behavior as rejection or manipulation, and instead see it as a coded language pointing to her deepest needs. Female psychology is not a mystery when approached with patience. Women want to feel chosen, valued, and understood, but they are also deeply attracted to men who retain their individuality and purpose beyond the relationship. This is why the man who sacrifices his entire identity for a woman often drives her away, while the man who stays grounded in his mission earns lasting admiration. Emotional intelligence, rather than raw logic, is often the missing link. Men who learn to listen actively, read between the lines, and respond with empathy rather than defensiveness can create a bond that outlasts superficial attraction. When you understand that women are drawn more to how you make them feel than what you can materially provide, the confusion dissolves, and you begin to see patterns instead of contradictions. She values emotional safety, but she also craves excitement. She respects strength, but she equally respects compassion. She wants to be desired, but not controlled. Balancing these truths requires self-mastery, not game. The ultimate lesson is that female psychology is not meant to be battled against, but aligned with. When you recognize that her instincts are rooted in survival, bonding, and trust, you stop reacting with frustration and start leading with wisdom. Once this perspective is internalized, the fog of confusion clears, and you realize that relationships with women are not chaotic puzzles to be solved, but natural dynamics to be understood. In mastering this knowledge, you gain not only clarity with women but also greater confidence, patience, and emotional stability within yourself, qualities that create harmony in every area of life. 2. Women respond to strength, not validation. One of the biggest mistakes men make in relationships and attraction is believing that women want constant validation. They assume that giving her endless compliments, reassurance, or approval will make her value them more. In reality, women are not drawn to men who try too hard to please. They are drawn to men who embody strength. Strength does not necessarily mean physical power, but rather emotional resilience, inner confidence, and the ability to stand firm in one's values. A man who constantly seeks validation communicates insecurity, which signals weakness. When a woman senses that a man needs her approval to feel good about himself, she subconsciously loses respect for him. On the other hand, when a man demonstrates strength through self-control, calmness under pressure, decisiveness, and a sense of direction, she naturally feels drawn to his presence. This is because strength represents stability, leadership, and protection, qualities that historically and biologically women have sought in a partner. Validation can be sweet in small doses, but if it becomes the foundation of interaction, it turns into desperation. A strong man does not beg for attention, he commands it through his presence. He knows his worth without needing anyone else to confirm it. He respects himself first, which teaches others to respect him as well. Women respond to this strength because it gives them a sense of security, admiration, and desire. The paradox is that the less a man tries to win her approval, and the more he focuses on living with integrity and self-discipline, the more magnetic he becomes. This does not mean being cold or dismissive, but rather balanced, stable to give affection without making it dependent on her reactions. A man rooted in strength creates polarity and attraction. She feels both his firmness and his capacity for care, which makes her want to follow his lead. Validation is fleeting, but strength is enduring. It does not waver with moods or circumstances. Women may smile when you validate them, but they feel deep attraction when they encounter true masculine strength. Therefore, the lesson is simple. Stop chasing approval and start cultivating strength. Build your character, sharpen your discipline, and walk with purpose. When you live from this foundation, you will find that women naturally respond, not because you sought their validation, but because they cannot resist the energy of genuine strength. 3. Emotional control. Is power. Emotional control is one of the greatest forms of power a person can develop, because it allows you to respond to life with clarity rather than react impulsively to every situation. Most people are ruled by their emotions, anger, fear, jealousy, or excitement without realizing that these emotions often cloud judgment, create unnecessary conflict, and lead to regretful decisions. When you can master your emotions, you no longer become a prisoner of the moment. Instead, you become the master of your mind and behavior. This mastery is not about suppressing emotions or pretending they don't exist, but about channeling them in a way that serves your higher purpose. For example, anger can destroy relationships if it erupts uncontrollably, but when controlled, it can be used as fuel for determination and positive change. Fear, if left unchecked, can paralyze action, but when managed, it sharpens awareness and helps in preparation. Emotional control is also deeply tied to self-respect and dignity. When you remain calm while others lose control, you stand out as someone trustworthy, confident, and grounded. It is in moments of tension that true character is revealed, and those who maintain composure gain influence, respect, and authority in the eyes of others. Moreover, emotional discipline provides mental clarity, making it easier to focus on solutions instead of dwelling on problems. It strengthens resilience, allowing you to endure setbacks without breaking down. In relationships, whether personal or professional, emotional control prevents misunderstandings from escalating as you choose your words carefully instead of letting temporary emotions dictate them. In leadership, it earns loyalty, because people naturally gravitate toward those who can remain steady in times of uncertainty. Practicing emotional control requires self-awareness, recognizing what triggers you, observing your feelings without immediately acting on them, and choosing the response that aligns with your values. It also requires patience and perspective, because often what feels urgent in the moment becomes insignificant with time. Developing this skill involves training your mind through reflection, mindfulness, or Stoic practices, reminding yourself that while you cannot always control external events, you can always control your inner reaction. This is why philosophers and wise leaders throughout history have emphasized that power lies not in dominating others, but in mastering oneself. A person who loses their temper easily is controlled by others, because anyone can provoke them. But a person who cannot be shaken emotionally cannot be manipulated. In this sense, emotional control is not weakness but strength, not coldness but wisdom. It allows you to operate from reason rather than impulse, principle rather than passion. For boundaries command, respect. Boundaries are not walls to keep people out, but rather guidelines that teach others how to treat us. In life, people often confuse kindness with weakness, and they test how far they can push until they meet resistance. This is why boundaries are so essential. They are the invisible lines that define where we end and where others begin, showing what behaviors we accept and what we will never tolerate. A person without boundaries often ends up being taken for granted, disrespected, or emotionally drained, because they send the signal that their time, energy, and emotions are free to be exploited. On the other hand, when you firmly establish boundaries, you communicate self-respect, and others naturally follow by respecting you in return. Boundaries protect your mental health, your time, and your energy, while also ensuring that your relationships remain balanced rather than ones. They are not selfish. They are an act of self-preservation and self-love. For example, saying no when you genuinely don't have the capacity teaches others that your needs matter just as much as theirs. At first, people may resist your boundaries, especially if they were used to taking advantage of your compliance. But over time, those who truly value you will adjust, while those who only sought to use you will disappear. Boundaries also create clarity, because they eliminate confusion and unspoken expectations. Instead of silently resenting someone for overstepping, you take responsibility by teaching them how to interact with you respectfully. The truth is, people respect what is firm, not what is endlessly accommodating. Think of boundaries as fences around a house. Without them, anyone could wander in, take what they want, and leave chaos behind. But with them, visitors know where the entry points are and approach with consideration. In relationships, friendships, and even professional environments, those who have strong boundaries are seen as confident, self-assured, and worthy of respect. Boundaries also elevate your value because they signal that your time and presence are not cheap. When you uphold your standards, you don't have to beg for love, attention, or recognition. People will naturally rise to meet the level you set. Most importantly, boundaries are not just about controlling others, they are about controlling yourself. You decide what you allow, what you engage with, and when to walk away. This sense of agency empowers you to live authentically, free from manipulation or exploitation. Ultimately, boundaries are the foundation of healthy relationships and a strong sense of self. Without them, respect is impossible, but with them, respect becomes automatic. Therefore, never feel guilty for setting boundaries because they are not punishments. They are instructions for how others must handle something valuable: your life, your energy, and your dignity. 5. Scarcity creates desire. Scarcity creates desire because human psychology is deeply wired to value what is rare, limited, or difficult to obtain, and this principle shapes much of how we pursue goals, relationships, and material possessions. When something is abundant and always available, the mind tends to take it for granted, assuming it will always be there. But when something is scarce, the brain interprets it as more valuable, more urgent, and worth chasing before it slips away. This is why luxury brands limit production, why rare artifacts are auctioned for millions, and why limited-time opportunities feel irresistible. Scarcity ignites the fear of missing out, and that fear drives action in ways abundance rarely does. In relationships, this principle is equally powerful. People who demonstrate high standards, self-control, and selectivity often seem more desirable because their time, attention, and affection are not given freely to just anyone. Their scarcity signals value, just like a rare diamond compared to a common stone. The same applies in personal growth and achievement. When a skill is difficult to master or a position is hard to earn, it carries prestige precisely because not everyone can attain it. Scarcity also pushes people to prioritize. It forces decisions by signaling that the window of opportunity won't remain open forever. This is why deadlines motivate procrastinators and why rare chances in life, whether to travel, invest, or commit, become defining moments. However, scarcity must be genuine to sustain desire. False scarcity may create short-term urgency but often leads to distrust when people realize the supply was never limited. Real scarcity, on the other hand, commands respect and heightens value naturally. When you position yourself as someone who does not chase, who chooses carefully, and who doesn't overextend, you become scarce in the eyes of others, which magnifies your worth. This is not about manipulation, but about understanding that what is easily accessible is rarely treasured. By embodying discipline, standards, and restraint, you create a natural aura of scarcity that makes others appreciate your presence more deeply. In every sphere of life, business, attraction, or personal mastery, scarcity transforms ordinary things into coveted treasures because the human heart and mind are magnetically drawn to what is rare, fleeting, and hard to find. Ultimately, scarcity reminds us that value is not always in the object itself, but in its availability. It is the very fact that something can be lost, missed, or never repeated that gives it weight and meaning. Therefore, when used wisely, scarcity is not just a tactic, but a timeless truth of human desire, teaching us both how to become more valued and how to recognize what truly deserves our pursuit. 6. Authenticity beats manipulation. In a world where appearances, social games, and manipulation often dominate interactions, authenticity stands out as a timeless strength that outlasts shallow tactics. Manipulation may win someone temporary favor, admiration, or even obedience, but it always carries an expiration date because it is rooted in deceit and hidden agendas. People might be fooled for a moment, but over time, truth always reveals itself. Authenticity, on the other hand, is grounded in honesty, self-respect, and consistency, which naturally inspires trust and loyalty. When you present yourself as you truly are without masks or pretenses, you remove the exhausting burden of maintaining lies and schemes, and instead attract people who value you for your real character. Authentic individuals are not concerned with pleasing everyone or bending themselves into a shape they are not. They understand that rejection is part of life, but fake approval is far worse than genuine acceptance. Manipulators often chase short-term validation, twisting words or controlling others to get what they want, but this only builds shallow connections that crumble under pressure. By contrast, authenticity fosters relationships built on transparency, respect, and depth, making them resilient in the face of challenges. Moreover, authenticity promotes inner peace, because you are not constantly pretending, performing, or fearing exposure. You are aligned with your true self. It is also empowering, since authenticity draws boundaries naturally. People who cannot handle your truth will walk away, leaving behind those who truly resonate with your values. Manipulation requires energy and constant calculation, while authenticity requires courage and self-acceptance, both of which grow stronger with practice. When you are authentic, you do not need to memorize strategies to keep people interested. Your presence, integrity, and consistency speak louder than tricks ever could. In professional life, authenticity builds credibility and lasting influence, while manipulation often burns bridges the moment it is uncovered. In personal life, authenticity creates genuine intimacy, while manipulation only produces suspicion and eventual disappointment. The lesson is simple: Manipulation may grant short-term victories, but authenticity builds legacies. In every interaction, choose truth over tactics, substance over strategy, and integrity over illusion. What you gain might not always be immediate applause, but it will be enduring respect, peace of mind, and the kind of connections that no scheme can ever manufacture. 7. Knowledge shifts the power dynamic. Knowledge is one of the most powerful tools a person can possess, because it changes not only how we perceive the world, but also how we operate within it. And this shift naturally alters the balance of power in any relationship, group, or society. Power is often associated with status, wealth, or authority, but at its root, power is the ability to influence outcomes, to shape decisions, and to act with confidence. Knowledge strengthens all of these abilities by removing ignorance and providing clarity. When one person knows something that others do not, they gain leverage, whether in business negotiations, social interactions, or even in intimate relationships, because information allows them to anticipate outcomes, avoid traps, and make choices from a position of awareness rather than blind reaction. History itself is full of examples where knowledge has tipped the scales of power. Empires rose and fell based on innovations, discoveries, and strategic intelligence, while leaders maintained dominance by controlling what the masses could or could not learn. On a personal level, knowledge equips individuals with discernment. They are less likely to be manipulated by empty promises, societal illusions, or emotional pressures, because they can recognize underlying motives and patterns. This shift in understanding often unsettles those who previously relied on ignorance to maintain dominance, because once knowledge spreads, authority built on secrecy or deception crumbles. For instance, an employee who learns about their rights, or a citizen who understands how laws and systems work, becomes far more difficult to exploit. Suddenly, the employer or government no longer holds unquestioned power. Similarly, in relationships, when one partner gains psychological insight into human behavior, they stop chasing validation and begin to set healthy boundaries, which immediately redefines the dynamic. This is why true empowerment does not come from external validation, money, or brute force, but from awareness and wisdom, because once the mind shifts, external conditions are easier to navigate. However, this also comes with responsibility. Knowledge can be used constructively to guide, teach, and uplift, or destructively to manipulate and dominate. And so the moral compass of the knowledgeable individual determines whether the new power dynamic creates harmony or exploitation. The essence of growth, then, is not only in acquiring knowledge but also in embodying it, because power without integrity corrupts, but knowledge tempered with humility liberates. When people begin to question